Hello there, and welcome. I'm so glad you found your way here tonight. Maybe you've had a long day. Maybe your mind has been busy with 1,000 small tasks and worries. Or maybe you're simply the kind of person who finds peace in learning something new, something gentle, something that helps you drift away from the day's demands. Either way, you've come to the right place. Tonight we're going on a quiet journey, not through distant galaxies or ancient civilizations, but through something much closer, something you carry with you always, your own body. This remarkable collection of systems, organs, tissues, and cells that has been with you since before you were born, working tirelessly, mostly in silence, to keep you alive and well. You don't need to do anything but rest. Let your breathing slow. Let your muscles soften. Let gravity gently pull you down into comfort. Because for the next while, we're going to explore 100 quiet facts about how your body works. Some might surprise you. Others might simply be interesting to consider as you drift toward sleep. All of them are true, verified by medical science, and presented here to help you relax into the gentle wonder of being human. Before we begin, if these calm explorations help you unwind at the end of your day, please consider subscribing to the channel. It helps others find their way here too, one peaceful soul at a time. Now, let's begin our journey, starting small, smaller than you can see, and working our way through the magnificent architecture of the human form. Your body is not a single thing. It never has been. From the very first moment of your existence, when a single fertilized cell began to divide, you have been a community. A vast cooperative civilization of tiny living units, each one working in quiet harmony with all the others. There are approximately 37 trillion cells in an average adult human body. 37 trillion. That number is almost impossible to imagine. If you tried to count them one per second, it would take you more than 1,000,000 years. These cells come in roughly 200 different types, each specialized for different tasks. Some carry oxygen. Others transmit electrical signals. Some create the proteins that build your tissues. Others defend you from invaders you'll never see. Each cell, no matter its type, is itself a miniature world. Wrapped in a delicate membrane that controls what enters and exits, every cell contains a nucleus, the command center where your genetic information is stored. This information, your DNA, is packaged into 46 chromosomes in most of your cells. 23 came from your mother, 23 from your father. Together, they contain roughly 20,000 genes, the instructions for building and maintaining you. DNA is an extraordinary molecule. If you could unwind all the DNA in just one of your cells and stretch it out, it would measure about 6 feet long. But it's coiled and folded so precisely, so efficiently, that it fits inside a nucleus you'd need a microscope to see. If you took all the DNA from all your cells and laid it end to end, it would reach from Earth to the Sun and back more than 300 times. You carry that much information inside you, quietly directing the processes that keep you alive. Most cells in your body are constantly being replaced. Your taste buds are renewed every 10 days or so. The cells lining your stomach last only about 5 days before being replaced. Red blood cells circulate for about 4 months before they're broken down and recycled. Skin cells shed and regenerate in cycles lasting a few weeks. Even your bones, which seem so permanent, are constantly being remodeled, dissolved, and rebuilt by specialized cells working in patient coordination. Some cells, though, last much longer. Most of the neurons in your brain, the cells that think and remember and dream, stay with you for your entire life. They were formed before you were born or in early childhood, and they remain, adapting and changing, but never replaced. The lens of your eye contains cells that also stay with you from birth. In this way, parts of you are as old as you are, while other parts are just days or weeks old. Water makes up about 60% of your body weight. In a person weighing 150 pounds, that's 90 pounds of water, distributed through blood, cells, and the spaces between tissues. This water is essential. It carries nutrients, removes waste, regulates temperature, and provides the medium in which all your body's chemical reactions take place. You could survive weeks without food, but only days without water. Your body contains many minerals too. Calcium and phosphorus, mostly in your bones and teeth, give you structure and strength. Iron, though you have only about 4 grams of it in total, is crucial for carrying oxygen in your blood. Tiny amounts of zinc, copper, selenium, and other trace elements play vital roles in enzyme function and cellular processes. Even gold exists in your body in amounts so small they're measured in micrograms, but it's there, dissolved in your blood and tissues. The air you breathe provides oxygen, but you also breathe out water vapor, carbon dioxide, and trace amounts of other gases. With each breath, you're participating in an exchange that's been happening since the first organisms learned to harness oxygen billions of years ago. The oxygen you inhale right now might have been exhaled by someone across the world last week, or by a tree in a rainforest, or by ocean phytoplankton. You are constantly exchanging atoms with the world around you. Your body temperature is maintained at approximately 98.6 degrees Fahrenheit or 37 degrees Celsius, though this varies slightly throughout the day and between individuals. This precise temperature is not arbitrary. It represents a balance, warm enough for chemical reactions to proceed efficiently, cool enough that proteins don't denature and lose their function. Your body works constantly to maintain this temperature through shivering when cold, sweating when hot, and adjusting blood flow to the skin. Inside your cells, mitochondria work as power plants, converting the glucose and oxygen you consume into ATP, adenosine triphosphate, the molecule that stores energy for cellular work. An average adult produces and uses about their own body weight in ATP every single day. This ATP is constantly being made, used, and remade, cycling through your cells thousands of times daily. It powers muscle contractions, nerve impulses, protein synthesis, and countless other processes. The pH of your blood is kept remarkably stable at around 7.4, slightly alkaline. Your body has multiple buffer systems to maintain this balance, because even small deviations can be dangerous. Your lungs help by removing carbon dioxide, which forms acid when dissolved in blood. Your kidneys help by excreting excess acids or bases. This careful regulation happens automatically, without you ever thinking about it. Every second, your body performs millions of chemical reactions. Proteins are synthesized. Molecules are broken down for energy. Signals are transmitted. Toxins are neutralized. Nutrients are absorbed. Waste is packaged for removal. All of this happens in a coordinated dance of chemistry, orchestrated by enzymes that speed up reactions without being consumed themselves. Each enzyme is precisely shaped to perform its specific task, like a key fitting a lock. You are, in the most literal sense, a process. Not a static thing, but a continuous flow of matter and energy, maintained in a dynamic, steady state called homeostasis. The you that exists now is not made of the same atoms that made you 5 years ago. You have been rebuilt piece by piece, while remaining somehow yourself. This is one of the deep mysteries of existence, and you embody it simply by being alive. As you lie here, breathing slowly, your cells are working. In your bone marrow, new blood cells are being born. In your skin, old cells are being shed and replaced. In your liver, toxins are being processed. In your pancreas, hormones are being released in precise amounts. All of this happens without your conscious effort, a symphony of biological processes that has been playing since before you were born. Now let's turn our attention upward to the organ that allows you to think these thoughts, to hear these words, to drift into sleep. Your brain. Weighing about 3 pounds in the average adult, your brain is roughly 60% fat. The remaining 40% is a combination of water, protein, carbohydrates, and salts. Despite making up only about 2% of your total body weight, your brain uses approximately 20% of your body's oxygen supply and 20% of its calories. It is an energy-hungry organ, constantly active, never truly at rest. Inside your brain are approximately 86 billion neurons. These are the cells that transmit information through electrical and chemical signals. Each neuron consists of a cell body, branching dendrites that receive signals from other neurons, and an axon that sends signals out. Some axons are microscopic. Others stretch remarkable distances. The longest axon in your body runs from the base of your spine to your big toe, a distance that can exceed 3 feet in tall individuals. Each neuron can connect to thousands of other neurons through junctions called synapses. Your brain contains roughly 100 trillion synapses, creating a network of staggering complexity. The patterns of connection between neurons give rise to your thoughts, memories, emotions, and consciousness itself. How exactly this happens, how physical matter becomes subjective experience, remains one of the deepest questions in science. Neurons communicate through a combination of electrical and chemical signals. When a neuron is sufficiently stimulated, it generates an action potential, an electrical impulse that races down its axon at speeds up to 268 miles per hour in the fastest neurons. When this impulse reaches the axon terminal, it triggers the release of neurotransmitters, chemical messengers that drift across the tiny gap of the synapse and bind to receptors on the next neuron, passing the signal along. Your brain produces dozens of different neurotransmitters. Dopamine is associated with reward and motivation. Serotonin influences mood and sleep. GABA, gamma-aminobutyric acid, generally inhibits neural activity, helping to calm and regulate the brain. Glutamate generally excites neurons, promoting learning and memory. The balance of these chemicals affects how you feel, how you think, and how you behave. Supporting the neurons are glial cells, once thought to be merely structural support, like glue holding neurons in place. We now know they do much more. Astrocytes, star-shaped glial cells, help regulate the chemical environment around neurons, provide them with nutrients, and may even participate in information processing. Oligodendrocytes wrap around axons to form myelin, a fatty insulating sheath that allows electrical signals to travel faster and more efficiently. Microglia act as immune cells, patrolling the brain for debris and pathogens. Your brain is divided into several major regions, each with specialized functions. The cerebrum, the largest part, has two hemispheres connected by a thick bundle of nerve fibers called the corpus callosum. The outer layer of the cerebrum, the cerebral cortex, is where much of your conscious thinking happens. It's heavily folded, increasing its surface area. If you could flatten it out, it would cover about 2.5 square feet. Different regions of the cortex handle different functions. The frontal lobe behind your forehead is involved in planning, decision-making, and controlling voluntary movements. The parietal lobe, near the top and back of your head, processes sensory information about touch, temperature, and body position. The temporal lobe near your temples is involved in hearing, memory, and language comprehension. The occipital lobe, at the back of your head, processes visual information. Deeper in the brain, the limbic system includes structures involved in emotion and memory. The amygdala processes fear and other emotions. The hippocampus is crucial for forming new memories. The hypothalamus, though tiny, regulates many basic functions: hunger, thirst, body temperature, sleep-wake cycles, and the release of hormones from the pituitary gland. The brainstem, connecting your brain to your spinal cord, controls many automatic functions. Your heartbeat, breathing, and blood pressure are regulated here without conscious thought. If you had to remember to make your heart beat or to breathe, you wouldn't survive. The brainstem handles these vital tasks automatically, even while you sleep. The cerebellum, a structure at the back of your brain beneath the cerebrum, coordinates movement and balance. It doesn't initiate movements, but it refines them, making them smooth and accurate. When you reach for a glass of water, your cerebellum adjusts the strength and timing of your muscle contractions, so you grasp it smoothly rather than knocking it over. Your brain is protected in multiple ways. The skull, of course, provides a hard outer shell, but there are other layers of protection too. 3 membranes called meninges surround the brain and spinal cord. Between 2 of these membranes flows cerebrospinal fluid, a clear liquid that cushions the brain, removes waste, and provides some nutrients. Your brain actually floats in this fluid, reducing its effective weight and protecting it from impacts. The blood-brain barrier is another protective feature. Special cells lining the blood vessels in your brain form tight junctions, creating a selective barrier that prevents many substances in your bloodstream from entering your brain tissue. This protects your neurons from toxins and pathogens, but it also means that many drugs can't easily reach the brain, which complicates the treatment of neurological diseases. Your brain generates electrical activity that can be measured with an electroencephalogram or EEG. These brain waves vary in frequency and amplitude depending on your state of consciousness. When you're alert and focused, your brain produces beta waves, relatively fast oscillations. As you relax, alpha waves emerge. In the early stages of sleep, theta waves appear. In deep sleep, slow delta waves dominate. Throughout the night, you cycle through different stages of sleep, each associated with different patterns of brain activity. During REM sleep, rapid eye movement sleep, your brain becomes highly active again, almost as active as when you're awake. This is when most vivid dreaming occurs. Your eyes move rapidly beneath your closed eyelids, but your voluntary muscles are paralyzed to prevent you from acting out your dreams. This paralysis sometimes persists briefly after waking, causing the unsettling experience of sleep paralysis. Sleep is essential for brain function. During sleep, your brain consolidates memories, transferring information from short-term to long-term storage. It also clears out metabolic waste products that accumulate during waking hours. The glymphatic system, a waste removal system in the brain, is most active during sleep, flushing out proteins and other debris that could otherwise accumulate and cause problems. Your brain continues to develop well into your 20s. The prefrontal cortex, involved in planning and impulse control, is one of the last regions to fully mature. This explains some of the characteristic behaviors of adolescence. Throughout life, your brain retains plasticity, the ability to change and adapt. Learning new skills, forming new memories, recovering from injury, all involve the creation of new synaptic connections and the strengthening or weakening of existing ones. The brain's energy comes almost entirely from glucose. Unlike other organs, the brain can't efficiently use fats or proteins for fuel under normal circumstances. This is why low blood sugar can make you feel confused, irritable, and unable to concentrate. Your brain is demanding more fuel, and it affects your entire experience. Nerves extend from your brain and spinal cord throughout your body, forming the peripheral nervous system. Sensory neurons carry information from your skin, muscles, and organs to your central nervous system. Motor neurons carry commands from your brain and spinal cord to your muscles, telling them when to contract. Some of these connections are simple reflexes, like pulling your hand away from something hot before you consciously register pain. Other connections are more complex, allowing for deliberate, coordinated movements. Your spinal cord itself is about 18 inches long in adults, running from the base of your brain down through the vertebral column. It's much thinner than people often imagine, only about as wide as your thumb for most of its length. Despite its modest size, it's essential for communication between your brain and body. Damage to the spinal cord can interrupt these signals, causing paralysis or loss of sensation below the injury site. Pain, though unpleasant, serves an important protective function. Specialized nerve endings called nociceptors detect potentially harmful stimuli, extreme temperatures, excessive pressure, certain chemicals. They send signals to your spinal cord and brain, which interpret these signals as pain. This motivates you to avoid or escape from the harmful situation. People born with conditions that prevent them from feeling pain often suffer repeated injuries because they lack this warning system. Your sense of touch involves multiple types of receptors in your skin, each sensitive to different stimuli. Some detect light touch, others respond to pressure, vibration, temperature, or pain. The density of these receptors varies across your body. Your fingertips and lips have far more touch receptors than your back or thighs, making them much more sensitive. This is reflected in the sensory cortex of your brain, where disproportionately large areas are dedicated to processing signals from your hands and face. Your brain constructs your perception of the world from the signals it receives, but this construction is not always accurate. Optical illusions demonstrate that your visual system makes assumptions about depth, color, and motion that can be fooled. Your other senses can be fooled too. The flavor of food, for example, depends heavily on smell. When you have a cold and your nose is congested, food often tastes bland because your brain isn't receiving the olfactory information it normally combines with taste. Right now, as you rest here, your brain is active. It's processing these words, it's monitoring your body's position, it's adjusting your breathing and heart rate. It's probably thinking about other things too. Planning, remembering, wandering. But it's also, hopefully, beginning to slow down, to ease toward the quieter rhythms of sleep. Let it. Let your thoughts drift. Let your brain do what it does best. Maintain you without effort, without strain. Deep in your chest, slightly to the left of center, your heart beats. It has been beating since before you were born, starting around 3 weeks after conception, and it will continue until your last moment. In an average lifetime of 75 years, your heart will beat more than 2.5 billion times. Right now, it's beating about 60 to 100 times per minute, though this varies based on your activity level, emotions, and state of rest. Your heart is a muscle, but not like the muscles in your arms or legs. It's made of specialized cardiac muscle that contracts rhythmically, automatically, without conscious control. It's about the size of your closed fist, weighing roughly 10 to 12 ounces in adults. Despite its modest size, it's incredibly powerful, pumping about 2,000 gallons of blood through your body every day. The heart has 4 chambers. The 2 upper chambers, the atria, receive blood returning to the heart. The 2 lower chambers, the ventricles, pump blood out to the body and lungs. Between the chambers are valves that ensure blood flows in only one direction. These valves open and close with each heartbeat, and their closing creates the characteristic lub-dub sound you can hear with a stethoscope. Blood flows through your heart in a specific sequence. Oxygen-poor blood from your body enters the right atrium through 2 large veins called the superior vena cava and inferior vena cava. When the right atrium contracts, it pushes blood through the tricuspid valve into the right ventricle. The right ventricle then contracts, pushing blood through the pulmonary valve into the pulmonary arteries, which carry it to your lungs. In your lungs, blood flows through tiny capillaries surrounding air sacs called alveoli. Here, carbon dioxide diffuses out of the blood into the air sacs to be exhaled, while oxygen diffuses from the air sacs into the blood. This oxygen-rich blood then returns to the heart through the pulmonary veins, entering the left atrium. When the left atrium contracts, it pushes blood through the mitral valve into the left ventricle. The left ventricle has the thickest, strongest walls of all the heart chambers because it has the hardest job, pumping blood out to your entire body. When the left ventricle contracts, it forces blood through the aortic valve into the aorta, the body's largest artery. The aorta is about as wide as a garden hose, and it branches into progressively smaller arteries that carry blood to all your organs and tissues. These arteries branch into even smaller vessels called arterioles, and finally into capillaries, the tiniest blood vessels. Capillaries are so narrow that red blood cells must pass through them in single file. The walls of capillaries are only 1 cell thick, allowing oxygen, nutrients, and other molecules to diffuse out of the blood into the surrounding tissues. At the same time, carbon dioxide and other waste products diffuse from the tissues into the blood. After passing through the capillaries, blood enters small veins called venules, which merge into larger veins that eventually return blood to the right atrium, completing the circuit. If you could lay out all your blood vessels end to end, they would stretch about 60,000 miles, more than twice the circumference of the Earth. Most of this length consists of capillaries. You have billions of them, forming intricate networks throughout your body, bringing nutrients and oxygen to every cell. Blood itself is a remarkable fluid. It makes up about 7 to 8% of your body weight. If you weigh 150 pounds, you have about 10 to 12 pints of blood. Blood consists of cells suspended in a liquid called plasma. Plasma is mostly water, but it also contains proteins, hormones, nutrients, waste products, and dissolved gases. Red blood cells, or erythrocytes, make up about 45% of blood volume. These cells are packed with hemoglobin, a protein containing iron that binds to oxygen. Each red blood cell can carry about 1 billion molecules of oxygen. Red blood cells are shaped like flattened discs with indented centers, giving them a large surface area relative to their volume, which helps them absorb and release oxygen efficiently. Red blood cells are produced in your bone marrow at a rate of about 2 million per second. They circulate for about 120 days before they're removed from circulation by the spleen and liver, broken down, and their components recycled. The iron from old red blood cells is salvaged and used to make new ones. The rest is converted into bilirubin, which gives bile its yellow color and is eventually excreted. White blood cells, or leukocytes, are less numerous than red blood cells, but just as important. They're part of your immune system, defending against infections and foreign substances. There are several types of white blood cells, each with different functions. Neutrophils engulf and destroy bacteria. Lymphocytes produce antibodies and coordinate immune responses. Monocytes develop into macrophages that eat debris and pathogens. Eosinophils and basophils are involved in allergic responses and fighting parasites. Platelets, or thrombocytes, are cell fragments that play a crucial role in blood clotting. When a blood vessel is damaged, platelets stick to the injured area and to each other, forming a plug. They also release chemicals that activate clotting factors in the plasma, leading to the formation of fibrin threads that weave through the platelet plug, creating a stable clot that seals the wound. Your heart's rhythm is controlled by its own electrical system. The sinoatrial node, a small cluster of cells in the right atrium, acts as the heart's natural pacemaker. It generates electrical impulses that spread through the atria, causing them to contract. These impulses then reach the atrioventricular node, which delays them slightly before sending them down to the ventricles through specialized conducting fibers. This ensures that the atria contract before the ventricles, optimizing the heart's pumping efficiency. The heart rate isn't fixed. It responds to signals from the nervous system and hormones in the blood. When you exercise or feel stressed, the sympathetic nervous system releases norepinephrine, which makes your heart beat faster and more forcefully, increasing blood flow to your muscles and brain. When you're resting or relaxed, the parasympathetic nervous system releases acetylcholine, which slows your heart rate, conserving energy. Blood pressure is the force blood exerts on the walls of your arteries. It's measured in two numbers. The higher number, systolic pressure, represents the pressure when your heart contracts. The lower number, diastolic pressure, represents the pressure when your heart relaxes between beats. Normal blood pressure for adults is generally considered to be around 120 over 80 millimeters of mercury, though this varies with age and other factors. Your circulatory system works closely with other systems to maintain homeostasis. When you're too hot, blood vessels in your skin dilate, increasing blood flow to the surface and allowing heat to radiate away. When you're too cold, these vessels constrict, reducing blood flow to the skin and conserving heat. After eating, more blood flows to your digestive system to absorb nutrients. During exercise, more blood flows to your muscles. The circulatory system also helps regulate pH and fluid balance. Your kidneys filter blood constantly, removing excess water, salts, and waste products, which are excreted as urine. They also help maintain blood pressure by controlling how much water is retained or excreted. Your heart works harder than any other muscle in your body. It never truly rests. Even between beats, during the brief pause when the chambers refill with blood, it's preparing for the next contraction. This continuous work requires a rich blood supply. The coronary arteries, which branch from the aorta just above the heart, supply the heart muscle itself with oxygen and nutrients. When these arteries become blocked, it leads to a heart attack, where part of the heart muscle is damaged or dies from lack of oxygen. The sound of your heartbeat, the pulse you can feel at your wrist or neck, is a reminder that life is motion. Blood flows continuously, carrying life itself through your body. Oxygen to hungry tissues, nutrients from your last meal, hormones carrying chemical messages, white blood cells patrolling for threats. All of this happening now, as you rest, as you breathe, as you drift toward sleep. Let's follow the breath. As you inhale, air enters through your nose or mouth. In your nose, the air passes through the nasal cavity, where it's warmed, moistened, and filtered. Tiny hairs called cilia and a layer of mucus trap dust, pollen, and other particles, preventing them from reaching your lungs. This is why breathing through your nose is generally better than breathing through your mouth, especially in cold or dry conditions. The warmed, filtered air then travels down your pharynx, the throat, and through your larynx, the voice box. The larynx contains your vocal cords, folds of tissue that vibrate when air passes through them, producing sound. A small flap called the epiglottis covers the larynx when you swallow, preventing food and liquid from entering your airway. From the larynx, air enters the trachea, or windpipe, a tube about 4.5 inches long and 3/4 of an inch in diameter. The trachea is reinforced with C-shaped rings of cartilage that keep it from collapsing. These rings are incomplete at the back, where the trachea touches the esophagus, allowing the esophagus to expand when you swallow food. The trachea branches into 2 bronchi, one for each lung. These primary bronchi enter the lungs and continue to branch, becoming smaller and smaller, like the limbs of a tree dividing into twigs. This branching continues about 23 times, creating a network of airways that ends in tiny sacs called alveoli. You have about 300 million alveoli in your lungs. Each one is surrounded by a network of capillaries. The walls of the alveoli and capillaries are extremely thin, allowing gases to diffuse across them easily. Oxygen in the air you've inhaled passes through the alveolar wall into the blood. Carbon dioxide in the blood passes into the alveoli to be exhaled. This gas exchange happens with every breath, continuously supplying your cells with oxygen and removing the carbon dioxide they produce as a waste product of metabolism. The total surface area of all your alveoli, if spread out flat, would cover about 75 square meters, roughly the size of a tennis court. This enormous surface area allows efficient gas exchange, even though each breath only takes a few seconds. Your lungs don't move themselves. They're enclosed in the chest cavity, surrounded by the rib cage and separated from the abdominal cavity by the diaphragm, a dome-shaped muscle. When you breathe in, the diaphragm contracts and moves downward. At the same time, muscles between your ribs contract, pulling your rib cage up and out. These actions increase the volume of your chest cavity, which decreases the pressure inside it. Air from outside, where the pressure is higher, flows into your lungs to equalize the pressure. When you breathe out, the diaphragm and rib muscles relax. The elastic tissues in your lungs and chest wall recoil, decreasing the chest cavity's volume and increasing the pressure. Air is pushed out of your lungs. This process is mostly passive during quiet breathing, but when you need to exhale forcefully, abdominal muscles can contract to push the diaphragm up even further. At rest, you breathe about 12 to 20 times per minute, taking in about half a liter of air with each breath. That's 6 to 10 liters of air per minute. During exercise, both the rate and depth of breathing increase dramatically. Athletes can breathe in over 100 liters of air per minute when working at maximum intensity. Your body monitors carbon dioxide levels in your blood closely. Chemoreceptors in your brainstem and major arteries sense when carbon dioxide levels rise or pH drops. This triggers an increase in breathing rate and depth to expel more carbon dioxide and take in more oxygen. Interestingly, it's the buildup of carbon dioxide, not the lack of oxygen, that's the primary trigger for breathing. This is why you can hold your breath for a while after hyperventilating, which expels excess carbon dioxide, but it's also why this can be dangerous. You might not feel the urge to breathe until oxygen levels have dropped to dangerously low levels. The amount of air you can forcibly exhale after taking the deepest breath possible is called vital capacity. In healthy adults, this is typically about 4 to 6 liters. However, even after a complete exhalation, about 1 liter of air remains in your lungs. This residual volume keeps your alveoli from collapsing completely and ensures some gas exchange can continue even when you're not actively breathing. Your lungs have a remarkable ability to expand and contract. They're made of elastic tissue, and they're lined with a substance called surfactant, which reduces surface tension and prevents the alveoli from sticking together. Without surfactant, your lungs would be much stiffer and harder to inflate, and the alveoli might collapse. Premature infants sometimes lack sufficient surfactant, which can cause respiratory distress syndrome. The respiratory system works closely with the circulatory system. Blood arriving at the lungs from the right side of the heart is low in oxygen and high in carbon dioxide. After passing through the capillaries around the alveoli, it's high in oxygen and low in carbon dioxide. This blood returns to the left side of the heart to be pumped out to the body. The two systems are so interlinked that problems with one often affect the other. Your lungs also help regulate pH by controlling how much carbon dioxide is in your blood. Carbon dioxide dissolves in blood to form carbonic acid, which lowers pH. By breathing faster, you expel more carbon dioxide, raising pH. By breathing slower, you retain more carbon dioxide, lowering pH. This respiratory contribution to pH balance works quickly, within seconds to minutes, complementing the slower but more powerful regulation by your kidneys. The respiratory system has immune functions too. The mucus and cilia in your airways trap microorganisms and debris. The mucus contains antibodies and antimicrobial substances. The cilia beat in coordinated waves, moving the mucus and any trapped particles up and out of the airways, a process called the mucociliary escalator. This is why you sometimes need to cough or clear your throat, especially in the morning. You're expelling accumulated mucus and debris. When you cough, your brain coordinates a complex sequence of events. You take a deep breath, your vocal cords close, your chest and abdominal muscles contract, building up pressure. Then your vocal cords suddenly open, and air rushes out at speeds that can exceed 500 miles per hour, expelling irritants from your airways. Sneezing is similar but involves the nasal passages. Irritation of the nasal lining triggers a reflex. You take a breath. Your tongue presses against the roof of your mouth, and then air is forcefully expelled through your nose and mouth. Sneezes can spray droplets at speeds exceeding 100 miles per hour, which is why covering your mouth and nose when you sneeze is important for preventing the spread of germs. Your voice is produced by air passing through your larynx. When you speak, muscles in your larynx adjust the tension and position of your vocal cords. Tighter, shorter vocal cords produce higher pitches. Looser, longer ones produce lower pitches. The sound produced by your vocal cords is then modified by your tongue, lips, teeth, and the shape of your mouth and nasal cavity, creating the wide variety of sounds in human speech. Even as you rest here, your breath continues, in and out, a gentle rhythm that has sustained you since your first moment outside the womb. You don't need to think about it. You don't need to remember to breathe. Your brainstem handles it automatically, adjusting the rate and depth as needed. Breathing slower now, deeper, easier, each breath a wave, gently rocking you toward sleep. The journey of food through your body is a story of transformation. What begins as a meal becomes energy, building blocks for new cells and waste to be eliminated. This journey involves multiple organs working in careful coordination, each contributing to the breakdown and absorption of nutrients. It begins in your mouth. Your teeth, 32 of them in adults, include different types specialized for different functions. Incisors, the flat front teeth, are good for cutting. Canines, the pointed teeth, are good for tearing. Premolars and molars, with their broader, flatter surfaces, are good for grinding. When you chew, you're breaking food into smaller pieces, increasing its surface area and making it easier for digestive enzymes to access. At the same time, your salivary glands are releasing saliva. You have 3 pairs of major salivary glands, parotid, submandibular, and sublingual, plus hundreds of minor salivary glands throughout your mouth. Together, they produce between 1 and 2 liters of saliva per day. Saliva is mostly water, but it also contains enzymes, most notably amylase, which begins breaking down starches into simpler sugars. Saliva also lubricates food, making it easier to swallow, and it contains substances that fight bacteria. Your tongue, a muscular organ covered with about 10,000 taste buds, does more than taste. It manipulates food, moving it around your mouth to be chewed thoroughly, and then shapes it into a bolus, a soft mass ready to be swallowed. Each taste bud contains 50 to 100 specialized receptor cells that can detect 5 basic tastes: sweet, salty, sour, bitter, and umami, a savory taste associated with proteins. When you swallow, your tongue pushes the bolus to the back of your mouth. This triggers a complex reflex coordinated by your brainstem. Your soft palate rises to close off your nasal cavity. Your larynx elevates, and the epiglottis folds down to cover it, protecting your airway. The upper part of your esophagus relaxes to receive the bolus. All of this happens in about 1 second, and most of it is involuntary. The esophagus is a muscular tube about 10 inches long that connects your throat to your stomach. It doesn't rely on gravity to move food downward. Instead, it uses peristalsis, rhythmic waves of muscle contraction that squeeze the bolus along. This is why astronauts can eat in microgravity, and why you could even swallow while standing on your head, though this isn't recommended. At the bottom of the esophagus is the lower esophageal sphincter, a ring of muscle that acts as a one-way valve. It relaxes to let food enter the stomach, then contracts to prevent stomach contents from flowing back up into the esophagus. When this sphincter doesn't work properly, stomach acid can splash into the esophagus, causing the burning sensation known as heartburn. Your stomach is a J-shaped muscular sac that can expand to hold up to about 2 liters of food and liquid, though its empty volume is much smaller, about 50 milliliters. The stomach serves several functions. It stores food, allowing you to eat a meal over a short time rather than having to eat continuously. It mechanically churns food, mixing it with gastric juices. And it begins the chemical breakdown of proteins. The lining of your stomach contains millions of glands that secrete gastric juice. This juice contains hydrochloric acid, which is strong enough to dissolve metal, with a pH between 1.5 and 3.5. The acid kills most bacteria that enter with food, activates digestive enzymes, and helps break down food. The stomach lining also secretes pepsinogen, which is converted to pepsin, an enzyme that breaks down proteins in the acidic environment. You might wonder why the stomach doesn't digest itself. The stomach lining produces a thick layer of mucus that protects it from the acid. The epithelial cells that line the stomach are also tightly packed and are constantly being replaced. You produce a new stomach lining every 3 to 5 days. When this protective system fails, the acid can damage the stomach lining, leading to ulcers. After being churned and mixed with gastric juice for 1 to several hours, food becomes a thick, acidic liquid called chyme. The pyloric sphincter, a muscular valve at the bottom of the stomach, opens periodically to release small amounts of chyme into the small intestine. This controlled release ensures that the small intestine isn't overwhelmed and has time to neutralize the acid and continue digestion. The small intestine is where most digestion and nutrient absorption occurs. Despite its name, it's not small in length. It's about 20 feet long in adults, coiled and folded to fit into your abdominal cavity. It has 3 sections: the duodenum, the jejunum, and the ileum. The duodenum, the first section, is about 10 inches long. Here, chyme is mixed with bile from the liver and digestive enzymes from the pancreas. The liver produces bile, a greenish-yellow fluid that helps digest fats. Bile is stored and concentrated in the gallbladder and released into the duodenum when fatty food is present. Bile salts emulsify fats, breaking them into smaller droplets that enzymes can work on more easily. The pancreas produces a variety of digestive enzymes. Pancreatic amylase continues the breakdown of starches. Lipases break down fats into fatty acids and glycerol. Proteases, including trypsin and chymotrypsin, break down proteins into smaller peptides and amino acids. The pancreas also secretes bicarbonate to neutralize the stomach acid in the chyme, raising the pH to about 6 or 7, which is optimal for the enzymes to function. The jejunum, the middle section of the small intestine, is about 8 feet long. The ileum, the final section, is about 12 feet long. Both are lined with millions of tiny, finger-like projections called villi. Each villus is covered with even tinier projections called microvilli. These structures dramatically increase the surface area of the small intestine. If you could spread the entire inner surface of your small intestine flat, it would cover about 200 square meters, roughly the size of a tennis court. Nutrients are absorbed through the villi into the bloodstream. Amino acids and simple sugars pass directly into capillaries within the villi and are transported to the liver via the hepatic portal vein. Fatty acids and glycerol are absorbed into cells lining the intestine, reassembled into fats, packaged into tiny droplets called chylomicrons, and transported through the lymphatic system before eventually entering the bloodstream. Your small intestine is also home to trillions of bacteria, collectively known as the gut microbiome. These microorganisms help digest certain fibers that human enzymes can't break down, produce vitamins like vitamin K and some B vitamins, and play important roles in immune function. The composition of your gut microbiome is unique to you and can be influenced by your diet, medications, and environment. What remains after nutrient absorption in the small intestine, mostly water, indigestible fiber, and bacteria, passes into the large intestine, or colon. The large intestine is about 5 feet long and wider than the small intestine, hence the names. Its primary function is to absorb water and electrolytes from the remaining material, turning it from a liquid slurry into solid feces. The large intestine has several sections. The cecum is a pouch where the small intestine connects to the large intestine. Attached to the cecum is the appendix, a narrow worm-like tube about 3 to 4 inches long. For a long time, the appendix was considered vestigial, a useless remnant of evolution. Now we know it may serve as a reservoir for beneficial gut bacteria, which can repopulate the intestine after illness. The colon continues upward on the right side of your abdomen, the ascending colon, then crosses over to the left side, the transverse colon, and descends on the left side, the descending colon. Finally, it becomes the sigmoid colon, which connects to the rectum. The rectum stores feces until they're eliminated through the anus. The entire journey from mouth to anus takes about 24 to 72 hours, depending on what you've eaten and individual variation. Food usually spends 6 to 8 hours in the stomach and small intestine, and 18 to 40 hours in the large intestine. Your liver, the largest internal organ weighing about 3 pounds in adults, performs over 500 functions. In addition to producing bile, it processes nutrients absorbed from the small intestine. It stores glucose as glycogen and releases it when blood sugar drops. It breaks down fats and synthesizes cholesterol. It metabolizes proteins and removes nitrogen-containing waste, converting it to urea, which is excreted by the kidneys. It detoxifies harmful substances, including alcohol and many drugs. It produces proteins necessary for blood clotting. It stores vitamins and minerals. It's remarkably resilient, able to regenerate after injury, but chronic damage can lead to scarring and liver failure. As you rest, your digestive system continues its work if you've eaten recently. Muscles contract in waves, moving contents along. Enzymes break chemical bonds. Nutrients cross into your bloodstream. Bacteria in your gut ferment fiber, producing gases and short-chain fatty acids. All of this happens automatically, without your awareness, a quiet transformation of the outside world into the substance of your body. Beneath your skin and muscles lies your skeleton, a framework of bones that gives you structure, protects your organs, and allows you to move. An adult skeleton typically contains 206 bones, though this number can vary slightly. Infants are born with about 270 bones, many of which are made of cartilage. As the child grows, some of these bones fuse together, and cartilage is gradually replaced by bone in a process called ossification. Bones are living tissues, not the dry, brittle structures you might see in a museum. They're made of cells embedded in a matrix of protein fibers and minerals. The protein, mostly collagen, provides flexibility and tensile strength. The minerals, primarily calcium and phosphorus in the form of hydroxyapatite crystals, provide hardness and compressive strength. This combination makes bone both strong and somewhat flexible, able to absorb impacts without shattering. There are several types of bone tissue. Compact bone, also called cortical bone, is dense and strong. It forms the outer layer of bones and the shafts of long bones. Spongy bone, also called cancellous or trabecular bone, is lighter and less dense, with a honeycomb-like structure. It's found at the ends of long bones and in the interior of other bones. This structure provides strength while minimizing weight. Long bones, like those in your arms and legs, have a hollow shaft filled with bone marrow. In infants and children, this is red marrow, which produces blood cells. As you age, much of the red marrow in long bones is replaced by yellow marrow, which is mostly fat. However, red marrow remains active in the ribs, sternum, vertebrae, pelvis, and ends of long bones throughout life, continuously producing red blood cells, white blood cells, and platelets. Your skeleton is divided into two main parts. The axial skeleton includes the skull, vertebral column, ribs, and sternum, 80 bones in total. The appendicular skeleton includes the bones of the limbs and the girdles that attach them to the axial skeleton. 126 bones in total. Your skull consists of 22 bones, most of which are fused together by immovable joints called sutures. The only skull bone that moves is the mandible, or lower jawbone, which forms a hinge joint with the temporal bone. This allows you to open your mouth to speak, eat, and breathe. The skull encases and protects your brain and forms the structure of your face. Your vertebral column, or spine, is composed of 33 vertebrae, though some of these fuse together in adulthood. Starting from the top, there are 7 cervical vertebrae in your neck, 12 thoracic vertebrae in your upper and mid-back, each connecting to a rib, 5 lumbar vertebrae in your lower back, 5 sacral vertebrae fused into the sacrum, and 4 coccygeal vertebrae fused into the coccyx or tailbone. The vertebrae are separated by intervertebral discs, cushions of fibrocartilage that act as shock absorbers and allow flexibility. Each disc has a tough outer ring and a soft, gel-like center. The spinal column is curved in an S shape when viewed from the side, with curves in the neck, upper back, and lower back. These curves help distribute your body weight and absorb shock when you walk or run. Your ribs form a cage that protects your heart, lungs, and other organs in your chest. You have 12 pairs of ribs. The first 7 pairs connect directly to the sternum through cartilage and are called true ribs. The next 3 pairs connect to the cartilage of the rib above them and are called false ribs. The last 2 pairs don't connect to the sternum at all and are called floating ribs. The bones of your arms and legs have similar structures. The upper arm bone, the humerus, connects to the scapula or shoulder blade, at the shoulder joint and to the radius and ulna, the forearm bones, at the elbow. The hand contains 27 bones, 8 carpals in the wrist, 5 metacarpals in the palm, and 14 phalanges in the fingers, 3 in each finger and 2 in the thumb. Similarly, the thigh bone, the femur, the longest and strongest bone in your body, connects to the pelvis at the hip joint and to the tibia and fibula, the lower leg bones at the knee. The kneecap, or patella, is a small, flat bone that protects the knee joint and increases the leverage of the thigh muscles. The foot also contains 26 bones, similar to the hand but adapted for bearing weight and providing leverage for walking. Joints are where bones meet. Some joints, like those in the skull, are immovable. Others allow slight movement, like the joints between vertebrae. And some allow free movement, like the shoulder, hip, knee, and elbow. Different types of joints allow different types of movement. The shoulder and hip are ball and socket joints, allowing movement in multiple directions. The elbow and knee are hinge joints, allowing movement mainly in one plane, like a door hinge. The joint between the first and second cervical vertebrae is a pivot joint, allowing your head to rotate. The joints in your wrist and ankle are complex, with multiple bones and joint types working together to provide both stability and flexibility. Joints are held together by ligaments, tough bands of connective tissue that connect bone to bone. Ligaments are flexible enough to allow movement, but strong enough to prevent excessive movement that could dislocate the joint. When ligaments are stretched or torn, it's called a sprain. Within many joints is a space filled with synovial fluid, a thick, slippery liquid that lubricates the joint, reducing friction and cushioning impacts. The surfaces of bones within the joint are covered with articular cartilage, a smooth, slippery tissue that further reduces friction. Cartilage also acts as a shock absorber. Bones are constantly being remodeled throughout your life. Cells called osteoclasts dissolve old or damaged bone tissue. Cells called osteoblasts deposit new bone tissue. This process is influenced by mechanical stress. Bones become stronger and denser in response to weight-bearing exercise. Without regular stress, as happens in prolonged bed rest or spaceflight, bones lose density and become weaker. Bones also serve as a reservoir for minerals. About 99% of the calcium in your body is stored in your bones. When blood calcium levels drop, hormones signal osteoclasts to break down bone, releasing calcium into the bloodstream. When blood calcium levels rise, osteoblasts build new bone, removing calcium from the blood and storing it. Bone density peaks in your mid-20s and gradually declines with age, especially in women after menopause. This can lead to osteoporosis, a condition where bones become porous and fragile, increasing the risk of fractures. Adequate calcium and vitamin D, along with weight-bearing exercise, help maintain bone health throughout life. Your skeleton is not just a passive scaffold, it's a dynamic, living system that responds to your activities, supports your movements, protects your vital organs, produces your blood cells, and maintains your body's mineral balance. Right now, as you lie still, your bones are supporting you, cradling you, quietly doing their work. Muscles allow movement. They make up about 40% of your body weight, and there are over 600 skeletal muscles in your body, ranging from tiny muscles that move your eyes to large muscles that move your legs. These muscles work in pairs and groups to create the complex, coordinated movements that define human motion. There are 3 types of muscle tissue. Skeletal muscle is attached to bones and is under voluntary control. Smooth muscle is found in the walls of internal organs like the stomach, intestines, and blood vessels, and it contracts involuntarily. Cardiac muscle, found only in the heart, is also involuntary and has unique properties that allow it to contract rhythmically throughout your life. Skeletal muscles are made of bundles of long cylindrical cells called muscle fibers. Each fiber is filled with even smaller structures called myofibrils, which contain the proteins that produce contraction. The 2 main contractile proteins are actin and myosin. They're arranged in overlapping filaments that give skeletal muscle its striated or striped appearance under a microscope. When a nerve signal reaches a muscle fiber, it triggers the release of calcium ions inside the cell. These calcium ions bind to proteins associated with the actin filaments, exposing binding sites for myosin. The myosin heads then bind to these sites and pull the actin filaments toward the center of the sarcomere, the basic functional unit of the myofibril. This sliding of actin past myosin shortens the sarcomere, and when millions of sarcomeres shorten simultaneously, the entire muscle contracts. This process requires energy in the form of ATP. Myosin uses ATP to power its pulling action and to release from actin so it can bind again and pull again. For short bursts of activity, muscles use ATP stored in the cells. For longer activity, muscles generate ATP by breaking down glucose and, when oxygen is available, through cellular respiration in mitochondria. When oxygen supply is insufficient, muscles can produce ATP through anaerobic metabolism, but this process produces lactic acid as a byproduct. Accumulation of lactic acid contributes to the burning sensation and fatigue you feel during intense exercise. After exercise, your breathing remains elevated to repay the oxygen debt, providing the oxygen needed to metabolize the lactic acid. Muscles work by pulling, not pushing. They're attached to bones by tendons, tough cords of connective tissue. When a muscle contracts, it pulls on the bones it's attached to, creating movement. Most movements involve pairs of muscles working in opposition. When you bend your arm, the biceps muscle on the front of your upper arm contracts, pulling your forearm toward your shoulder. The triceps muscle on the back of your upper arm relaxes. When you straighten your arm, the triceps contracts and the biceps relaxes. Some muscles are specialized for power, with large, strong fibers that can generate great force, but fatigue quickly. Others are specialized for endurance, with smaller fibers that can contract for long periods without tiring. Most muscles contain a mix of fiber types, and the proportion can change with training. Your face contains dozens of small muscles that control your expressions. These muscles attach to your skin rather than to bones, allowing them to move your skin and create the subtle movements that convey emotion. The same 6 basic facial expressions — happiness, sadness, anger, fear, surprise, and disgust — are recognized across all human cultures, suggesting they're hardwired into our biology. Your diaphragm, the primary muscle of breathing, is a dome-shaped sheet that separates your chest from your abdomen. When it contracts, it flattens, increasing the volume of your chest cavity and drawing air into your lungs. The intercostal muscles between your ribs also help with breathing, raising and lowering your rib cage. Your tongue is made entirely of muscle, arranged in multiple directions to give it extraordinary flexibility. This allows the precise, rapid movements needed for speech and for manipulating food in your mouth. Your eyes are moved by 6 small muscles for each eye, allowing you to track moving objects and shift your gaze quickly. The largest muscle in your body is the gluteus maximus, the main muscle of your buttocks. It's used in climbing, running, and standing up from a sitting position. The smallest skeletal muscle is the stapedius in your middle ear, which is less than a millimeter long. It dampens excessive vibrations of the stapes bone to protect your inner ear from loud sounds. The strongest muscle, in terms of the force it can exert relative to its size, is debatable, but candidates include the masseter, the main chewing muscle in your jaw, which can exert a bite force of several hundred pounds, and the soleus, a calf muscle important for standing and walking that can exert sustained force for hours. Smooth muscle found in your internal organs contracts more slowly than skeletal muscle, but can maintain contraction for longer periods. The smooth muscle in your blood vessel walls adjusts their diameter, controlling blood flow and pressure. The smooth muscle in your digestive tract produces the peristaltic waves that move food along. The smooth muscle in your bladder allows it to stretch and store urine, then contract to expel it. Muscles require a constant nerve supply to function. Motor neurons from your brain and spinal cord send signals to muscles, triggering contraction. The junction where a motor neuron meets a muscle fiber is called a neuromuscular junction. Here, the neuron releases a neurotransmitter, acetylcholine, which binds to receptors on the muscle fiber and initiates the contraction process. Muscle strength and size can increase with use and decrease with disuse. When you exercise, especially resistance training, you create small tears in muscle fibers. Your body repairs these tears, making the fibers slightly larger and stronger. This process, called hypertrophy, is how muscles grow. Conversely, when muscles aren't used, they atrophy, becoming smaller and weaker. Even when you're not moving, some muscle fibers are always slightly contracted, maintaining muscle tone. This keeps muscles ready to act and helps maintain posture. When you stand, for instance, muscles in your legs and back are constantly making tiny adjustments to keep you balanced. You're usually not aware of these adjustments, but they're essential for remaining upright. Right now, as you rest, most of your skeletal muscles are relaxed. Your diaphragm continues its gentle rhythm. Your heart muscle beats steadily. Smooth muscles in your blood vessels and organs do their work. Your body rests, conserves energy, prepares for tomorrow's movements. Let it. Let the tension go. Let the muscles soften and release. Your skin is your largest organ, covering about 20 square feet in adults and weighing about 8 pounds, roughly 16% of your total body weight. It's your first line of defense against the outside world, protecting you from injury, infection, dehydration, and harmful radiation. Skin has 3 main layers. The outermost layer, the epidermis, is made of tightly packed cells that are constantly being renewed. The cells at the bottom of the epidermis divide, pushing older cells upward. As these cells move up, they fill with a tough protein called keratin and eventually die, forming a protective barrier at the skin's surface. These dead cells are constantly shed and replaced. You lose about 30 to 40,000 skin cells every minute, which amounts to almost 9 pounds of skin cells per year. Beneath the epidermis is the dermis, a thicker layer containing blood vessels, nerve endings, hair follicles, sweat glands, and sebaceous glands that produce oil. The dermis is made mostly of collagen and elastin fibers, which give skin its strength and elasticity. With age, these fibers break down and are replaced more slowly, leading to wrinkles and sagging. Below the dermis is the subcutaneous layer, or hypodermis, made mostly of fat. This layer insulates your body, stores energy, and cushions deeper structures. The thickness of this layer varies greatly depending on where it is on your body and your overall body composition. Your skin contains several types of sensory receptors that detect different stimuli. Mechanoreceptors respond to touch and pressure. Some are located near the skin's surface and respond to light touch. Others are deeper and respond to deeper pressure and vibration. Thermoreceptors detect temperature changes. Some respond to cold, others to heat. Nociceptors detect painful stimuli like extreme temperature, sharp objects, or certain chemicals. The density of these receptors varies across your body. Your fingertips and lips have very high densities of touch receptors, making them extremely sensitive. Your back has a much lower density. This is why you can detect tiny details with your fingertips but might not notice a light touch on your back. Your skin also plays a crucial role in temperature regulation. When you're too hot, blood vessels in the dermis dilate, increasing blood flow to the skin and allowing heat to radiate away. Sweat glands become active, secreting sweat onto the skin surface. As the sweat evaporates, it cools the skin and the blood flowing through it. You have about 2 to 4 million sweat glands, most of them located on your palms, soles, forehead, and armpits. When you're too cold, blood vessels in the skin constrict, reducing blood flow to the surface and conserving heat. Tiny muscles attached to hair follicles contract, causing your hairs to stand up. In animals with thick fur, this traps an insulating layer of air. In humans, with our relatively sparse body hair, it just causes goosebumps, a vestigial reminder of our evolutionary past. Your skin synthesizes vitamin D when exposed to ultraviolet light from the sun. This vitamin is essential for calcium absorption and bone health. However, excessive sun exposure can damage DNA in skin cells, potentially leading to skin cancer. The pigment melanin, produced by cells called melanocytes in the epidermis, helps protect against UV damage by absorbing and scattering UV radiation. People with darker skin have more melanin and greater natural protection, though everyone should still avoid excessive sun exposure. Wounds to the skin trigger a complex healing process. Blood clotting stops bleeding. White blood cells clean up debris and fight infection. Fibroblasts in the dermis produce new collagen. Epithelial cells divide and migrate to cover the wound, In most cases, the wound heals completely within days to weeks. Deep wounds may leave scars, areas where the normal skin structure isn't fully restored. Your sense of sight begins in your eyes, organs that detect light and convert it into neural signals your brain can interpret. Each eye is roughly an inch in diameter. The front of the eye is covered by the cornea, a clear, curved structure that begins the process of focusing light. Behind the cornea is the iris, the colored part of your eye, which controls the size of the pupil, the opening that lets light into the eye. Light passes through the pupil and through the lens, a flexible structure that can change shape to fine-tune focus. Muscles attached to the lens contract or relax to make it thicker or thinner, allowing you to focus on objects at different distances. With age, the lens becomes less flexible, which is why many people need reading glasses as they get older. The focused light hits the retina at the back of the eye. The retina contains about 120 million rod cells and 6 million cone cells. Rods are sensitive to low light and provide black and white vision. Cones are sensitive to color and work best in bright light. There are 3 types of cones, each sensitive to different wavelengths corresponding to red, green, and blue light. Your perception of all other colors comes from combinations of signals from these 3 types of cones. When light hits a rod or cone, it triggers a chemical change that generates an electrical signal. These signals are transmitted through several layers of neurons in the retina and converge on the optic nerve, which carries them to the brain. Interestingly, the photoreceptors are actually located behind the neurons and blood vessels in the retina, so light has to pass through these other layers before reaching them. Your sense of hearing begins in your ears. Sound waves travel through the ear canal and vibrate the eardrum, a thin membrane at the end of the canal. These vibrations are transmitted through 3 tiny bones in the middle ear, the malleus, incus, and stapes, the smallest bones in your body. The bones amplify the vibrations and transmit them to the cochlea in the inner ear. The cochlea is a spiral-shaped, fluid-filled structure. Inside it is the organ of Corti, which contains about 15,000 hair cells arranged along a membrane. Different regions of this membrane vibrate in response to different frequencies of sound. The hair cells have tiny projections that bend when the membrane vibrates, generating electrical signals that are transmitted to the brain via the auditory nerve. Your inner ear also contains the vestibular system, which detects head position and movement, helping you maintain balance. It includes 3 semicircular canals oriented in different planes, plus 2 chambers containing structures that detect linear acceleration and gravity. Signals from the vestibular system, combined with signals from your eyes and from proprioceptors in your muscles and joints, tell your brain where you are in space and how you're moving. Your sense of smell, or olfaction, depends on receptors in the roof of your nasal cavity. These receptors can detect thousands of different odor molecules. When you breathe in, air carries odor molecules to these receptors. When a molecule binds to its corresponding receptor, it triggers a signal that's transmitted to the olfactory bulb in your brain. Smell is closely linked to memory and emotion. Perhaps because the olfactory system has direct connections to the limbic system, the brain's emotional center. Your sense of taste, or gustation, comes from taste buds on your tongue and other parts of your mouth and throat. Each taste bud contains 50 to 100 receptor cells that can detect the 5 basic tastes: sweet, salty, sour, bitter, and umami. What we commonly call flavor is actually a combination of taste, smell, temperature, and texture. This is why food tastes different when you have a cold and your sense of smell is impaired. Your senses work together to create your perception of the world. They provide the raw data that your brain interprets, allowing you to navigate, communicate, and survive. Even now, resting, your senses are active. You might hear distant sounds, feel the texture of your sheets, smell faint scents in the air. All of this information flows to your brain, quietly monitored, largely ignored as you drift towards sleep. Your body constantly produces waste products that need to be removed. Carbon dioxide from cellular respiration is exhaled by your lungs. Solid waste from digestion is excreted by your large intestine. But many other waste products are dissolved in your blood and need to be filtered out. This is the job of your kidneys. 2 bean-shaped organs about 4 to 5 inches long, located on either side of your spine, just below your rib cage. Each kidney contains about 1 million tiny filtering units called nephrons. Blood enters each nephron through a cluster of capillaries called a glomerulus. The walls of these capillaries are permeable, allowing water, salts, glucose, amino acids, and waste products to pass through into a cup-shaped structure called Bowman's capsule. Blood cells and large proteins are too big to pass through and remain in the blood. The filtered fluid then flows through a long, twisted tube where most of the water and useful substances are reabsorbed into the blood. The tube has different regions with different functions. The proximal tubule reabsorbs most of the glucose, amino acids, and about 2/3 of the water and salt. The loop of Henle creates a concentration gradient that allows further water reabsorption. The distal tubule and collecting duct fine-tune salt and water balance under the control of hormones. What remains after this selective reabsorption is urine, a solution of water. Urea, a nitrogen-containing waste product from protein breakdown, excess salts, and other substances the body needs to eliminate. Urine flows from the collecting ducts into the renal pelvis, then down the ureters, muscular tubes that use peristalsis to move urine to the bladder. Your bladder is a hollow, muscular organ that stores urine until you're ready to eliminate it. It can hold about 16 to 24 ounces of urine, though the urge to urinate typically begins when it contains about half that amount. When you urinate, muscles in the bladder wall contract, and sphincter muscles at the exit relax, allowing urine to flow out through the urethra. Your kidneys don't just filter waste. They also regulate blood pressure by controlling how much water is excreted or retained. When blood pressure is low, they release renin, which triggers a cascade of reactions leading to the retention of salt and water and the constriction of blood vessels, raising blood pressure. They also produce erythropoietin, a hormone that stimulates red blood cell production when oxygen levels are low, and they activate vitamin D, which is essential for calcium absorption. Each day, your kidneys filter about 200 quarts of blood, producing about 2 quarts of urine. The exact amount depends on how much you drink, how much you sweat, and other factors. The color and concentration of urine can tell you a lot about your hydration status. Pale yellow urine indicates good hydration. Dark yellow or amber urine suggests dehydration. Your liver, as mentioned earlier, is involved in digestion, but it does much more. It's your body's primary detoxification organ, processing drugs, alcohol, and other toxins to make them water-soluble and easier to excrete. It breaks down old red blood cells and metabolizes hemoglobin. It synthesizes many of the proteins found in blood, including albumin, which helps maintain osmotic pressure, and clotting factors, which are essential for blood to clot properly. The liver stores vitamins A, D, E, K, and B12, as well as iron and copper. It regulates blood sugar by storing excess glucose as glycogen and breaking down glycogen to release glucose when levels drop. It produces cholesterol, which is necessary for cell membranes and the synthesis of certain hormones, though too much can contribute to heart disease. Your liver can regenerate. If part of it is damaged or removed, the remaining liver tissue can grow back to nearly the original size, though the structure may not be exactly the same. This remarkable capacity for regeneration is unique among internal organs and has made liver transplantation from living donors possible. The lymphatic system is another crucial part of your body's cleaning and defense systems. It's a network of vessels that run parallel to your blood vessels, but instead of blood, they carry lymph, a clear fluid derived from the fluid that leaks out of capillaries into the spaces between cells. Lymphatic vessels have valves that ensure lymph flows in one direction, toward the heart. Along the way, lymph passes through lymph nodes, small bean-shaped structures that filter the lymph. Lymph nodes contain white blood cells that can trap and destroy bacteria, viruses, and cancer cells. When you have an infection, nearby lymph nodes often swell as they work overtime to fight the invaders. The spleen, located on the left side of your abdomen near your stomach, is the largest lymphatic organ. It filters blood, removing old or damaged red blood cells and recycling their components. It also stores white blood cells and platelets and helps mount immune responses to blood-borne pathogens. The thymus, located in your chest behind your sternum, is where T cells, a type of white blood cell crucial for immunity, mature. It's most active in childhood and gradually shrinks with age. By adulthood, it's been largely replaced by fat, though it continues to produce some T cells. Lymphatic tissue is also found throughout your body in places like your tonsils, adenoids, and Peyer's patches in your intestines. These tissues act as guardians, monitoring for pathogens that enter through your mouth, nose, and digestive system. Your body has multiple overlapping systems for maintaining cleanliness and balance. Waste is removed, toxins are neutralized, fluids are filtered and recycled. All of this happens continuously, quietly, keeping your internal environment stable. As you rest, these systems continue their work, cleaning, filtering, maintaining. Hormones are chemical messengers that travel through your bloodstream, carrying signals from one part of your body to another. They're produced by the endocrine system, a network of glands scattered throughout your body. Unlike the nervous system, which sends rapid, specific signals through nerves. The endocrine system sends slower, more widespread signals through hormones. But these signals can have powerful and long-lasting effects. The pituitary gland, a pea-sized structure at the base of your brain, is often called the master gland because it controls many other endocrine glands. It's divided into two parts. The anterior pituitary produces hormones that regulate growth, reproduction, and metabolism. Growth hormone stimulates growth in children and helps maintain muscle and bone mass in adults. Thyroid-stimulating hormone tells the thyroid gland to produce thyroid hormones. Adrenocorticotropic hormone stimulates the adrenal glands to produce cortisol. Prolactin stimulates milk production in nursing mothers. Follicle-stimulating hormone and luteinizing hormone regulate the production of sex cells and sex hormones in both males and females. The posterior pituitary doesn't make hormones, but stores and releases hormones produced by the hypothalamus, including oxytocin, which stimulates uterine contractions during childbirth and milk ejection during nursing, and antidiuretic hormone, which tells the kidneys to retain water. The hypothalamus, a region of the brain just above the pituitary, serves as the link between the nervous and endocrine systems. It monitors the internal environment and releases hormones that control the pituitary. It also controls body temperature, hunger, thirst, sleep, and circadian rhythms. The thyroid gland, located in your neck, produces thyroid hormones that regulate metabolism, the rate at which your cells convert nutrients into energy. Too much thyroid hormone, hyperthyroidism, can cause weight loss, rapid heartbeat, and nervousness. Too little, hyperthyroidism, can cause weight gain, fatigue, and depression. The thyroid also produces calcitonin, which helps regulate calcium levels in the blood. The parathyroid glands, 4 small glands behind the thyroid, produce parathyroid hormone, which raises blood calcium levels by stimulating bone breakdown, increasing calcium absorption in the intestines, and reducing calcium excretion by the kidneys. Calcium is crucial not just for bones, but also for nerve function, muscle contraction, and blood clotting. The adrenal glands sit atop your kidneys. Each has 2 parts. The adrenal cortex produces several hormones, including cortisol, which helps regulate metabolism and stress response, aldosterone, which helps control blood pressure by regulating salt and water balance, and small amounts of sex hormones. The adrenal medulla produces epinephrine, adrenaline, and norepinephrine. These hormones are released in response to stress or danger, triggering the fight-or-flight response. Your heart rate increases. Blood flow to muscles increases. Airways dilate. Pupils dilate. Digestion slows. Your body is preparing to either confront the threat or escape from it. The pancreas, tucked behind your stomach, has both endocrine and exocrine functions. We've discussed its exocrine function, producing digestive enzymes. Its endocrine function involves clusters of cells called islets of Langerhans. Beta cells in these islets produce insulin, which lowers blood glucose by promoting glucose uptake into cells and storage as glycogen. Alpha cells produce glucagon, which raises blood glucose by stimulating glycogen breakdown and glucose production in the liver. Diabetes occurs when this system doesn't work properly. In type 1 diabetes, the immune system destroys beta cells, so the pancreas can't produce insulin. In type 2 diabetes, cells become resistant to insulin, so glucose can't enter cells efficiently. Both types result in high blood glucose levels, which can damage blood vessels, nerves, and organs over time. The pineal gland, a small structure deep in your brain, produces melatonin, a hormone that regulates sleep-wake cycles. Melatonin production increases in darkness and decreases in light, helping to synchronize your internal clock with the day-night cycle. Artificial light, especially blue light from screens, can suppress melatonin production, which is why using electronic devices before bed can interfere with sleep. The gonads, ovaries in females and testes in males, produce sex hormones in addition to producing sex cells. The ovaries produce estrogen and progesterone, which regulate the menstrual cycle, support pregnancy, and influence the development of female sex characteristics. The testes produce testosterone, which supports sperm production and influences the development of male sex characteristics. Hormones affect almost every aspect of your physiology. They influence your growth and development, your metabolism and energy levels, your mood and stress response, your reproductive capacity, and even your behavior. The endocrine system works closely with the nervous system, often responding to neural signals and, in turn, influencing neural function. Hormone levels are tightly regulated through feedback loops. When a hormone level is too low, signals are sent to increase production. When it's too high, production is decreased. This maintains homeostasis, keeping hormone levels within a narrow, healthy range. Disruptions to these feedback loops, whether from disease, stress, medications, or environmental factors, can have widespread effects. As you rest here, your endocrine system is at work. Melatonin is rising, helping you drift towards sleep. Growth hormone will peak during deep sleep, supporting tissue repair and growth. Cortisol is low now, but it will start to rise before you wake, helping to mobilize energy for the new day. All of this happens automatically, orchestrated by chemical signals flowing through your blood. The human body has the remarkable capacity to create new life. The reproductive system in males and females differs significantly, but both are designed for the same ultimate purpose: producing offspring and ensuring the continuation of the species. In males, the primary reproductive organs are the testes, two oval-shaped glands located in the scrotum, a sac of skin outside the body. The testes produce sperm, the male sex cells, and testosterone, the primary male sex hormone. Sperm production requires a temperature slightly lower than normal body temperature, which is why the testes are located outside the body cavity. Sperm are produced continuously from puberty onward, at a rate of about 1,500 per second, or about 100 million per day. Each sperm is a tiny, specialized cell with a head containing genetic material, a midpiece packed with mitochondria to provide energy, and a tail that propels it forward. From production to maturation, the process takes about 70 days. Mature sperm are stored in the epididymis, a coiled tube about 20 feet long if stretched out. During ejaculation, sperm travel through the vas deferens, a muscular tube, where they're mixed with fluids from the seminal vesicles and prostate gland to form semen. This fluid provides nutrients for the sperm and helps them survive in the acidic environment of the female reproductive tract. In females, the primary reproductive organs are the ovaries, two almond-sized glands located in the pelvic cavity. Unlike males, who produce sex cells continuously, females are born with all the immature eggs, or oocytes they'll ever have, about 1 to 2 million at birth. By puberty, this number has decreased to about 300,000 to 400,000. Only about 400 to 500 will actually be released during ovulation over a woman's reproductive years. Each month, usually one oocyte matures and is released from the ovary in a process called ovulation. The mature egg is swept into the fallopian tube by finger-like projections called fimbria. If sperm are present and fertilization occurs, it typically happens in the fallopian tube. The fertilized egg, now called a zygote, begins to divide as it travels down the tube toward the uterus over the course of several days. The uterus, or womb, is a pear-shaped muscular organ about the size of a fist. Its lining, the endometrium, thickens each month in preparation for a potential pregnancy. If fertilization occurs and the embryo implants in the uterine lining, the endometrium supports the developing embryo. If fertilization doesn't occur, the lining is shed during menstruation, and the cycle begins again. The menstrual cycle, typically about 28 days, but variable between individuals, is controlled by a complex interplay of hormones. In the first half of the cycle, estrogen levels rise, causing the endometrium to thicken and stimulating the maturation of an egg. Around day 14, a surge in luteinizing hormone triggers ovulation. In the second half of the cycle, progesterone levels rise, further preparing the endometrium for implantation. If pregnancy doesn't occur, estrogen and progesterone levels drop, triggering menstruation. If fertilization and implantation are successful, the cluster of cells begins a remarkable journey of development. At first, it's just a ball of cells. Then it forms layers that will give rise to different tissues and organs. By about 3 weeks after conception, a primitive heart has formed and begun to beat. By 8 weeks, all major organs have begun to develop, though they're not yet functional. This early stage is called an embryo. From 9 weeks until birth, the developing human is called a fetus. Over the following months, organs mature, the skeleton develops, muscles strengthen, and the fetus grows dramatically. By the 3rd trimester, the fetus can hear sounds from outside the womb, respond to light, and even practice breathing movements, though the lungs don't inflate until after birth. The placenta, an organ that develops from both embryonic and maternal tissue, serves as the interface between mother and fetus. It allows oxygen and nutrients to pass from the mother's blood to the fetus, and waste products to pass from the fetus to the mother. The umbilical cord connects the fetus to the placenta, carrying blood back and forth. Pregnancy typically lasts about 40 weeks from the first day of the mother's last menstrual period, or 38 weeks from conception. As the due date approaches, the fetus settles into a head-down position. Hormonal changes trigger the onset of labor. The cervix, the lower part of the uterus, begins to dilate. Contractions of the uterine muscles, initially irregular and mild, become stronger and more frequent. Labor progresses in stages. During the first stage, contractions cause the cervix to dilate fully to about 10 centimeters. This can take hours or even days, especially for first-time mothers. During the second stage, the mother pushes, and the baby moves down through the birth canal and is born. The third stage involves the delivery of the placenta. At birth, dramatic changes occur in the newborn's body. The lungs, filled with fluid in the womb, inflate with the first breath. Openings in the heart that allowed blood to bypass the lungs in utero close. The umbilical cord, no longer needed, is clamped and cut. The newborn begins a journey of growth and development that will continue for years. Growth is rapid in infancy and childhood. Babies typically triple their birth weight by 1 year and quadruple it by 2 years. Height increases dramatically too. After a period of slower, steady growth during middle childhood, adolescence brings another growth spurt, driven by increases in sex hormones. Girls typically have their growth spurt earlier than boys. Most people reach their full adult height by their late teens or early 20s. Development isn't just physical. The brain continues to develop throughout childhood and adolescence. Neural connections are formed and refined. Myelination, the insulation of axons with myelin, continues into the 20s, particularly in the prefrontal cortex, the area involved in planning and impulse control. This ongoing brain development explains why children and adolescents think and behave differently than adults. Aging is a gradual process that begins in early adulthood. Cells divide more slowly, tissues become less elastic, bones lose density, muscle mass decreases, metabolism slows, hormone levels change. The cumulative effects of DNA damage, oxidative stress, and other factors lead to the gradual decline in function we associate with aging. Yet even with these changes, many systems continue to function well into old age, a testament to the body's remarkable resilience and redundancy. Your body is constantly under threat from pathogens, bacteria, viruses, fungi, and parasites that would like to use you as a resource. Fortunately, you have an immune system, a complex network of cells, tissues, and molecules that defends against these invaders. The first line of defense is your barriers. Skin prevents most pathogens from entering. Mucus in your respiratory and digestive tracts traps pathogens. Stomach acid kills many bacteria that are swallowed. Tears, saliva, and other secretions contain enzymes that break down bacterial cell walls. These barriers are non-specific. They work against all threats. If pathogens breach these barriers, the innate immune system responds. This is the second line of defense, and it acts quickly, within minutes to hours. White blood cells, called neutrophils and macrophages, engulf and digest pathogens in a process called phagocytosis. Natural killer cells destroy virus-infected cells and cancer cells. The inflammatory response causes redness, heat, swelling, and pain at the site of infection, bringing more immune cells and increasing blood flow to the area. Inflammation is triggered by the release of chemical signals from damaged cells and immune cells. These signals cause blood vessels to dilate and become more permeable, allowing fluid and immune cells to move from the blood into the tissues. This is why an infected or injured area becomes swollen and red. While uncomfortable, inflammation helps contain and eliminate the threat. If the innate immune system can't quickly eliminate the threat, the adaptive immune system is activated. This is the third line of defense, and it's more specific and powerful, but it takes days to develop. The adaptive immune system involves lymphocytes, a type of white blood cell. There are two main types, B cells and T cells. B cells produce antibodies, proteins that bind to specific molecules, called antigens, on the surface of pathogens. Each B cell produces antibodies that recognize a single antigen. When a B cell encounters its specific antigen, it divides rapidly, producing many identical copies of itself. Some become plasma cells that secrete large amounts of antibody. The antibodies circulate in the blood and lymph, binding to pathogens, marking them for destruction by other immune cells, neutralizing toxins, and preventing pathogens from entering cells. T cells come in several types. Helper T cells coordinate the immune response by releasing chemical signals that activate other immune cells. Cytotoxic T cells directly kill infected or cancerous cells. Regulatory T cells help prevent the immune system from attacking the body's own cells. The adaptive immune system has memory. After an infection is cleared, some B cells and T cells remain as memory cells. If the same pathogen is encountered again, even years later, these memory cells respond quickly and vigorously, often eliminating the pathogen before symptoms develop. This is the principle behind vaccination. Exposing the immune system to a harmless version of a pathogen, or parts of it, so that memory cells are formed, and the person is protected against the real pathogen. The bone marrow produces all blood cells, including immune cells. The thymus, as mentioned, is where T cells mature. Lymph nodes filter lymph and provide sites where immune cells can encounter pathogens and become activated. The spleen filters blood and stores immune cells. Together, these organs ensure a constant supply of immune cells and facilitate their activation when needed. Sometimes the immune system makes mistakes. Autoimmune diseases occur when the immune system attacks the body's own tissues. In rheumatoid arthritis, it attacks joints. In type 1 diabetes, it attacks insulin-producing cells in the pancreas. In multiple sclerosis, it attacks the myelin sheaths around neurons. The causes of autoimmune diseases are complex and not fully understood, likely involving a combination of genetic and environmental factors. Allergies are another type of immune mistake. In allergies, the immune system overreacts to harmless substances like pollen, pet dander, or certain foods. The first time the allergen is encountered, the immune system produces IgE antibodies against it. These antibodies bind to mast cells. The next time the allergen is encountered, it binds to the IgE on the mast cells, causing them to release histamine and other chemicals. This causes the symptoms of allergies: sneezing, itching, swelling, and in severe cases, anaphylaxis, a life-threatening reaction. When you get a cut, a scrape, a bruise, your body immediately begins the healing process. Platelets form a clot to stop bleeding. Inflammation brings immune cells to clean up debris and fight infection. Fibroblasts produce collagen to close the wound. New blood vessels grow into the area. Epithelial cells divide and migrate to cover the surface. Within days to weeks, depending on the size and severity of the injury, the wound is healed. Bone healing follows a similar process. When a bone breaks, blood vessels are damaged and a blood clot forms. Immune cells clean up debris. A soft callus of cartilage and fibrous tissue forms around the break. Over weeks to months, this is gradually replaced by hard bone. Eventually, the bone is as strong as it was before, though the site of the fracture may be slightly thicker. Even as you age, your body retains the capacity for healing and adaptation. New neurons can form in certain parts of the brain. Muscles can grow stronger with exercise. Bones can increase in density with weight-bearing activity. Your immune system can learn to recognize new pathogens. Your body is not static. It's dynamic, responding and adapting to the demands placed upon it. Throughout this journey, we've explored the systems and processes that make you who you are. From the tiniest cells to the largest organs, from electrical signals in neurons to chemical signals in hormones, from the oxygen you breathe to the waste you excrete, every part of your body works in concert to maintain your life. You are a community of trillions of cells. You are a network of vessels carrying blood to every corner of your body. You are electrical pulses racing through neurons. You are chemical reactions in enzymes and hormones. You are the breath entering and leaving your lungs. You are the food being transformed into energy and structure. You are the immune cells defending against invisible threats. You are all of this and more. Tonight, as you drift toward sleep, these processes continue. Your heart beats, your lungs breathe, your brain processes, consolidates, dreams, your cells divide and die and are replaced. You are constantly being made and remade, a river that's never the same twice, yet somehow always yourself. Rest now. Let your body do what it does best. Maintain itself without your conscious effort. You don't need to direct your heartbeat, regulate your temperature, or filter your blood. Your body knows how. It's been doing this since before you were born. Let it work its quiet magic as you slip into the gentle darkness of sleep. If you've enjoyed this peaceful journey through the landscape of your own body, please consider subscribing for more calm explorations of the world and how it works. Sweet dreams and good night.